I want to marry Maya, so I'm leaving you, Henry said. I was shocked and didn't understand what he was saying. Just after I had given birth to our child, a young woman I had never seen before came to me with Henry. Henry looked at me as if it was normal and said, "Ever since we got married, you've done nothing but order me around and have a bad attitude." But Maya was there for me when I needed someone to talk to. I felt sorry for him, thinking it was sad that he felt bossed around by me. In reality, it was the opposite. He couldn't do anything unless I told him to. I wanted to scream at him, but I was too confused to speak. Henry continued, "This child will be raised by us. We'll take the baby." I couldn't believe what he was saying. My body was weak from giving birth, and though I wanted to scream, I couldn't even raise my voice. Finally, Henry reached out for the bed where our daughter was sleeping. Just then, there was a knock on the hospital room door. When the door opened, Olivia entered. Henry and Maya turned pale when they saw who was with her. The person Olivia had called was someone important. "My name is Milline Johnson. I'm 29 years old and currently pregnant with my first child. My husband, Henry Johnson, and I were colleagues at the company we joined as new graduates. At this company, second-year employees teach new employees. Henry was very kind to me and taught me my job with great care. He answered my questions without any annoyance and helped me when I was stuck. I was truly grateful to have such a kind senior." A year passed quickly, and now it was my turn to be a senior paired with a new employee. Even then, Henry gave me advice on how to teach and communicate effectively. I think I built a good relationship with my junior, but Henry wasn't just nice to me because we were partners. Even after we were no longer partners, we still worked together a lot. He couldn't say no when someone asked him for help, no matter how busy he was. Many people took advantage of his kindness to dump work on him or seek his advice. I made it my mission to learn my job well so I wouldn't be a burden on Henry. One time, Henry collapsed from overworking. Everyone else was shocked, but I knew this would happen. I felt my efforts didn't mean much because others kept relying on Henry. I regretted that Henry was driven to collapse, but when he told me I was the first to care for him so much, we ended up getting married. Our first year of marriage was very happy. I asked Henry not to overdo it so he didn't take on as much work, but he still couldn't say no to people. Sometimes he took on too much, but his kindness was one of his strengths. I watched over him to make sure he didn't overwork himself. Then I found out I was pregnant. Henry and I were overjoyed, but I had severe morning sickness early in the pregnancy. I felt dizzy and nauseous all the time and couldn't go to work. I was supposed to work longer, but I took early maternity leave and used my sick days. Even on leave, I felt terrible. I had heard morning sickness could be bad, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. I couldn't get up and prepare breakfast or see Henry off to work. I was bedridden most of the time, spending my days on the sofa. Our dinners were often food delivery or ready-made meals. "Sorry, it's just ready-made food again today," I said. "It's okay, the food is good," Henry replied. He never complained about the meals, but he didn't say much else either. Henry often acted as if he wasn't involved in what I was going through. He would ask if I was okay, but he didn't think to clean or do the laundry. Instead, "I'm feeling really sick. Could you hang the laundry that's in the washer?" I asked. "Sure, got it. I'll take care of it," Henry replied. When I asked him to do something, Henry would do it promptly and without complaint. However, the fact that he wouldn't do anything unless I asked was quietly stressful for me. I wanted to ask, "Why can't you just notice?" But I held back. It felt selfish because he did help when I asked. I've heard that in some marriages, regardless of whether the wife is pregnant or not, some husbands believe housework is solely the woman's job and don't help at all. Compared to that, Henry was much more helpful. I kept telling myself this, but no matter how much I wish, Henry never took the initiative to do housework on his own. He would do it if I asked, but not otherwise. Once, when I had a slight fever, I thought Henry might notice if I left the dishes undone. But even after a full day, the dishes were still there, and he didn't seem to question why. "Henry, I've got a bit of a fever today," I said. "Oh, that's tough. Being pregnant must be hard," he replied, but his words sounded like it was someone else's problem. I hate to ask, but could you do the dishes? "Sure," he agreed readily. It was frustrating. Eventually, I realized something. Henry couldn't say no if asked, but he didn't do anything unless asked. I used to rely on Henry to learn my job and consulted him when I hit a snag, but I couldn't recall a single time he initiated a conversation. It was the same after we got married. Before I got pregnant, I would ask, "Hey, can you pick up some groceries on your way home from work?" "Not a problem. I'll leave the stuff here," he would say. "Thanks." By the way, we were about to run out of toilet paper, weren't we? I would ask. Wait, really? We're running low on toilet paper. No, I didn't get it. You didn't ask for it. If I asked Henry to pick up groceries after work, he would buy exactly what I asked for. But even if he realized we were running low on toilet paper, he wouldn't buy it unless I specifically asked him to. Henry wouldn't buy anything unless I specifically asked for it. I hoped he would learn to stop needing reminders, but no matter how many times I asked for the same thing, he never took the initiative. He would do it gladly but never on his own. Here's the shopping you asked for. Oh, and the hallway light bulb needs replacing, Henry said. Thanks. You got the light bulb too, right? I asked. No, I didn't get that. You didn't ask for it, he replied. What? You can't buy it unless you're asked. If you noticed, you could have just gotten it, I said, feeling frustrated. Hey, what's with the sudden anger? Henry looked puzzled. I felt like I had become more nagging over time because of this. Even if I said something, instead of reflecting, Henry just looked confused. It wasn't worth my time. The stress of dealing with Henry seemed to be making my health worse. They say pregnancy can make you hypersensitive. It must be tough, Henry said as if it was none of his business. What do you mean, tough? I let out a big sigh. Henry seemed clueless and troubled by my constant nagging. Once I started feeling better, he said, shouldn't you move around a bit? Have you put on weight recently? At the checkup, they said I'm managing my weight well, I replied. Really? But you've obviously gained weight, he said. Of course I have. I have a baby growing inside me. I need to prepare for that, right? I explained. Henry replied, unconvinced, his face showing he didn't quite accept what I said. He frowned as if he found my appearance distasteful. After that, he started avoiding me. He began coming home late or having dinner out more often. He claimed work was busy, but I knew that since his collapse, his department had been careful not to overload him with work. Henry's work made adjustments so he could spend more time at home since I was pregnant, so he couldn't be working overtime. Being around Henry was frustrating, so I didn't say anything. Then I got a call from Olivia Smith, a junior at work I hadn't spoken to in a while. It's been a while, hasn't it, Olivia? I said. Yes, Milline, how's your morning sickness? She asked. It's gotten a lot better compared to the beginning, I replied. That's great to hear, Olivia said, relieved. We talked about how Olivia was doing. She was brilliant from the start and is now the president's secretary. Despite being much more successful than me, she still adores me as her senior. So, how about you, Milline? Olivia asked. Well, I'm feeling better, but there are some issues with Henry, I said. Olivia's face grew stern as I shared my recent troubles. I told her how Henry wouldn't do anything unless asked, his poor perception, and his lack of initiative. As I spoke, I wondered if maybe I was expecting too much. After all, being pregnant doesn't mean I'm ill. Maybe I've been too dependent on Henry. What? That's awful, Olivia said quickly. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that about your husband, but honestly, that's just not right. Olivia's firm stance was reassuring. Indeed, Henry has been uncooperative during my pregnancy. Even if he doesn't do it on purpose, the lack of improvement despite my reminders means he just isn't willing to change. He's avoiding me, claiming he's got a lot of work. He's coming home late too, I said. Do you really believe what your husband's saying about his work? Olivia asked. Her question made my heart skip a beat. When I hesitated, Olivia bravely said what I had been fearing to think. I don't want to think about it, but could he be cheating? She asked. It was something I had thought about many times recently. Henry's department is supposed to be slow now, and no one is doing overtime. Yeah, you're right, I sighed. The most common reason for pretending to work late and not coming home would be an affair. I want to believe he's just avoiding me because I nag too much, but then I have to wonder who he's spending his time with and where. Olivia, I'm sorry to ask, but if you notice Henry doing anything suspicious at work, could you let me know? I think I'll do some digging too, I asked. All right, Olivia agreed. Despite asking Olivia to keep an eye out, Henry still seemed to be avoiding me. Even though it was supposed to be a slow period, he started working late and coming in on weekends. Suspicious that Henry was really at work on his supposed working weekends, I reached out to Olivia for confirmation. She informed me there were no departments working on weekends. It made me wonder again. Was he having an affair? By that time, I had stopped expecting anything from Henry. I was feeling stable and could move around more than in the early stages of pregnancy. Despite the heaviness of my belly, I slowly took care of all the household chores without asking Henry for anything, but of course, not once did he offer to help. While I kept an eye on Henry's behavior, the baby in my belly grew healthily. Finally, labor began. Henry was absent, claiming to be working this weekend too. I tried to reach him, but his phone was unreachable, and there was no reply to my emails. I called a taxi on my own and headed to the hospital. Unlike my indifferent husband, Olivia rushed to the hospital to be by my side. "Are you okay, Milline?" Olivia asked. "I'm fine. I'll make it through." "Where's Henry?" I replied. "He said he's working," I told her. Olivia bit her lip, holding back words. I knew without her saying that there were no departments working that day. I showed Olivia a thumbs up to hide my nearly tearful face and was then wheeled into the delivery room. They say giving birth is like pushing a watermelon through your nose, and that's not far from the truth. After hours of agony, the sound of my baby's healthy cry gave me the greatest relief. The baby born was a girl. Holding her in my arms, I felt the weight and the love. But childbirth is indeed exhausting both mentally and physically, and I fell asleep like a lump of clay. "Here you are," a voice said. I'm not sure how many hours I had slept when suddenly I heard such a voice and my consciousness surfaced. I must have been moved while I was sleeping. I was back in the hospital room I was assigned before giving birth. In the bed next to me, my newborn daughter was sleeping soundly. I wondered where Olivia had gone. I hadn't even had a chance to thank her for coming when the door opened abruptly without a knock. "The baby's born, huh?" Henry said. Maybe because I was still tired from giving birth and waking from a long sleep, my mind wasn't working properly. I finally realized that Henry was there, but the young woman next to him was unfamiliar, which confused me even more. "Wow, is this the baby?" Her face is all wrinkly like a little monkey. The woman laughed as she peered into the bed. "Hey, who is this woman?" I asked. "This is Maya. I'm planning to marry her," Henry said. What? Such sudden words made no sense, not because I was tired or just awake, but because they were incomprehensible. "I want to marry Maya, so I'm leaving you," Henry continued. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said, staring in disbelief. Henry looked at me as if it were the most natural thing. "Because ever since we got married, you've done nothing but order me around and you have a bad attitude." But that's it. It was Maya who was there for me when I needed someone to talk to. I felt sorry for him, thinking how pitiful it was that he felt bossed around by his wife. Bossed around by me? It's the other way around. You don't do anything unless I tell you to. I wanted to scream at him, but I was too confused to form the words. "Maya used to be seriously ill and can't have children," Henry said with a pained look as he gazed at Maya. Maya's eyes moistened as she snuggled closer to Henry. "So I figured it's perfect since I have a child." What? I couldn't comprehend what was being said. I truly cannot understand. But Henry, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, pointed to my daughter sleeping beside me. "We'll raise this child. We'll take the baby." "What on earth are you talking about?" I wanted to shout but couldn't manage more than a whisper due to the exhaustion from childbirth. Henry finally reached out for the bed where our daughter was sleeping. That's when it happened. "Excuse me," a knock came on the hospital room door. The door opened and in came Olivia. "Olivia. Congratulations on your delivery, Milline. You did really well," Olivia said as she came over and smiled kindly. It was then that I realized I hadn't received a single word of thanks or concern from Henry. Had I become nothing more than a means for Henry to provide a child for Maya, who couldn't have one? As I sat in shock, Henry stepped between Olivia and me. "Olivia from the secretarial department. Why are you here? Don't you realize it's family time?" Henry said, Maya giggling at his words. Family time? Then what was he doing here? I was trembling with anger when Olivia tilted her head with a calm expression. "What are you two doing here, Henry? What were you doing while your wife was giving birth, risking her life?" Well," Henry mumbled awkwardly, a guilty look on his face. "And Milline, I brought the things you asked for," Olivia said, ignoring Henry. She held an envelope in her hand. "Maybe it's better to wait until you've settled down a bit." "It's fine. I don't want him to get away. Plus Maya is here too." "I didn't think she would actually come," I said, giving a wry smile at Olivia's concerned look. Henry and Maya both looked puzzled. "So, you want a divorce and you want to be with Maya?" I asked. "Hey, wait," Henry said, flustered. "That's not it. She's been taking it out on me ever since she got pregnant." Olivia murmured, "Oh really?" in response to Henry's self-victimization claim. "So, you've been pretending to work overtime and lavishing your mistress with gifts?" No, that's not." Henry started, but Olivia cut him off. "This is your time card record." All the days you told Milan you were working overtime, you actually left on time. There's no record of weekend work either. How could you know that? Henry's eyes widened in surprise. I was the one who asked her to investigate, I said. Olivia, taking full advantage of her role as the president's secretary, had obtained Henry's movement records from each department. The attendance records, exit logs, and expenses had all been reviewed, and it was clear that Henry hadn't been overworked at all. In fact, his department was in a slow period. If you want a divorce, that's fine, but I won't give up living with our daughter, and you'll pay child support, I declared. Why should I? It's your sudden change in behavior that caused this. You should be paying me, Henry retorted. Then you should have just asked for a divorce from the start instead of cheating. Just so you know, I've got all the evidence of your affair, I said, and Olivia handed Henry the envelope. I had hired a detective agency to investigate Henry's infidelity. Henry's face turned pale as he looked through the contents of the envelope. This can't be happening. Oh, it's happening, I said firmly. You made your choices, Henry. Now you'll face the consequences. The findings over the phone were damning. I was going to pick up the photos and documents that served as evidence, but labor had started, so Olivia went to get them for me. Inside the envelope were photos of two people walking down the street arm in arm, looking very much like a couple. To anyone who didn't know them, they would appear to have the closeness of a couple. All the evidence is here. There's no escaping it now. I glared at Maya as I spoke, and she trembled with fear. It's not like that, she said, tears welling up in her eyes as she approached me. I didn't know Henry was married. What? I thought he was divorced with children, so I thought if I can't have children, I want to help raise Henry's child. Maya sniffled, but I frowned, thinking her story was a bit too far-fetched. After all, Henry had just asked me for a divorce a moment ago. Despite the fact that he was laughing next to me a moment ago, I'm not the bad one. I just want to raise a child with the person I love. Why should I be scolded for that? Maya exclaimed, her moral compass seemingly in disarray, leaving me astounded. At this point, it seemed like there was no use in arguing or persuading her otherwise. Olivia, who had been listening to the entire exchange, let out a deep sigh. It's good that I called him, Olivia murmured before flinging the door to the hospital room open. There stood the president, a man with a presence looking exasperated. Henry straightened up as if jolted. I had never met him in person, but I recognized his face. Hey, Henry. I came here because my secretary called me, and what situation is this? Henry was in complete panic, not having expected his company's president to appear. Of course, I was also surprised. I had asked Olivia for help, but I had no idea she had involved the president. Milan, sorry for barging in like this. First off, congratulations on your delivery. Oh, thank you very much, I stammered, my tone changing completely from when I was glaring at Henry to a gentle smile for the president. I understand this is a delicate time, but given the circumstances, it seems important to address this now, the president continued, his voice calm yet authoritative. Henry, your behavior is unacceptable. Not only have you neglected your responsibilities as a husband, but your actions have also brought disrepute to our company. This cannot be overlooked. Henry's face turned pale. Sir, I can explain. Save it, the president interrupted. There will be a formal inquiry into your conduct. For now, you're suspended from all duties. We'll discuss the future of your employment once we've reviewed all the evidence. Henry stood there, speechless, as the weight of his actions began to sink in. Turning to me, the president said, Milan, I assure you, we will handle this matter with the utmost seriousness. Please take care of yourself and your newborn. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you, sir, I replied, grateful for his support. As the president left, Olivia remained by my side, her presence a source of comfort. Henry and Maya stood awkwardly, the reality of their situation finally hitting them. You should leave, Olivia said firmly to Henry and Maya. Milan needs rest and peace, not more stress. Henry, defeated, nodded and led Maya out of the room. The door closed behind them, leaving me alone with Olivia and my sleeping daughter. Thank you, Olivia, I whispered, feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion. You're welcome, Milan. You deserve better than this, and we'll make sure you get it, she replied, squeezing my hand gently. As I looked at my daughter, I felt a renewed sense of strength and determination. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I knew I would face them head-on, for her sake and mine. I was asked by Milan to pick up some documents from the detective agency, and I made sure they were correct. Yes, Olivia said it was okay for her to look, and when checking the documents, I recognized the face of Henry's mistress. At Olivia's words, I inadvertently glanced at Maya. She looked away uncomfortably. Who is she anyway? I asked. I had no recognition of Maya and didn't know where Henry had met her. I only knew from the detective agency's report that she worked at the reception of a subsidiary company adjacent to Henry's office. Maya is my niece, the president said with a heavy sigh. Your niece? I asked, surprised. Henry looked equally astonished, perhaps having kept the president's relationship to Maya a secret. Maya made an awkward face. According to the president, it was true that Maya had been seriously ill as a child, which had resulted in her inability to have children. Her illness had led to her being quite spoiled by her parents, perhaps out of their pity for her. Due to this pampering, Maya had grown up self-centered, expecting everything to go her way. Unable to find a job anywhere, her desperate parents had turned to her uncle, the president, who reluctantly employed her in the subsidiary company. And to think you'd go after an employee with a family, the president said, his voice heavy with disappointment. But No buts, he interrupted sharply. How many times do you intend to repeat the same mistakes? I can't look after you any longer. You're fired. No way, Maya slumped dejectedly as the president spoke firmly. Henry looked horrified but said nothing. Henry, you too. Leaving your pregnant wife to play around with a young girl, that's unacceptable. Henry tried to defend himself weakly, but You've been saying your wife has a bad attitude, the president continued, but she's carrying a new life in her. It's natural for her to be a bit on edge. You should have been more understanding instead of acting as usual. I will also take appropriate action within the company. The president's stern words were a final blow. Henry stood there, speechless, while Maya looked defeated. The president's actions and words underscored the gravity of the situation, and as Henry and Maya were escorted out, the room was left in a heavy silence. I turned to Olivia, who was still by my side. Thank you, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. I couldn't have done this without your help. Olivia gave me a reassuring smile. You did all the hard work, Milline. You deserve to have peace and support. Now, focus on your baby and take care of yourself. As I looked at my daughter, who was sleeping peacefully, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The turmoil was far from over, but at least in this moment, I could hold onto the small victory and the support of those who cared. The president said he would take Maya to her parents and then left the room with her and Olivia, his secretary. That left just Henry and me alone in the hospital room. There was a heavy, awkward silence. Henry, trembling, apologized and begged me to forget everything he had said before. He said we shouldn't get a divorce, but I was firm. I'm going through with the divorce, I told him. I was going to bring it up anyway. We can't just pretend nothing happened. That's too convenient. Do you really think you can fix things with me after everything that's happened? It's insulting. We have enough evidence for the divorce. Think it over, I said. I don't care about Maya's excuses anymore. What matters is that my daughter grows up in a peaceful environment. If a father is unreliable and unfaithful, she's better off without him. Henry kept begging me not to leave him, but I warned him that if he didn't stop, I'd call the police. He left without saying anything else. My daughter and I were discharged from the hospital without any issues. Instead of going back to the apartment where Henry and I had lived, I went straight to my parents' house. I had already told them everything, and they suggested I stay with them and relax. They were happy to see their granddaughter. Henry realized I hadn't returned to our apartment with our daughter and came to my parents' house, asking to live together again. I firmly refused and said that any further communication should go through a lawyer. Eventually, Henry and I divorced. He promised to pay child support properly. Since then, Henry was transferred from his position at the head office to a branch office in the countryside. The president decided to move him there to stop his harassment, which was effectively a demotion. Henry hadn't been involved in important projects after collapsing from overwork, and no one missed him. Maya, who had the affair with Henry, was cut off by her uncle, fired from the company, and disowned by her parents. Even though her illness was unfortunate, it didn't excuse her actions. As for me, I was able to stay home and raise my daughter during her early years. Once she was old enough for preschool, I went back to work. I had always worked hard to support myself, and my new job at a major company has been fulfilling. Olivia, who supported me a lot, has become a close friend. We often go out for meals and catch up. I plan to keep working hard for my daughter's sake so we can live happily together.